In this video, we dive into the most stupid ways Karens have died. From a Karen leaving their cabin in sub-zero temperatures, to a Karen standing on a step stool, handling exposed wiring in her kitchen, thinking it was a simple fix before the danger became clear. It was the evening of January 14, 2015, in a remote area of northern Wisconsin. January temperatures in the region often fall into the single digits. The cabin sat miles from the nearest town, connected by unlit two-lane highways and narrow private roads cutting through dense forest. Marlene was 61 years old and had been retired for 3 years after a long career as a school librarian. She spent her winters splitting time between her apartment and a shared family cabin in the northern part of the state. She rarely drove in winter conditions and relied on other family members for most of the logistics during cabin trips. Within the family, she had a reputation for dominating group decisions and responding poorly when challenged. On previous visits, she had reorganized sleeping arrangements, kitchen storage, and common areas without asking, then treated objections as ingratitude. She had stopped speaking to a sibling for several months over a disagreement about shared furniture. People close to her described a pattern where she reframed losing an argument as choosing to disengage. She did not back down, and she did not turn back. On the second evening of the trip, a disagreement developed over sleeping arrangements that had been informally agreed upon before anyone arrived. The dispute involved Marlene and at least 2 of the 3 relatives present. It escalated over the course of about an hour. At one point, a relative told her directly that it was too cold to be outside without proper clothing and that she should calm down before doing something she couldn't take back. Marlene told him she didn't need to be managed. A few minutes later, another relative handed her coat to her and suggested she at least put it on. She pushed it back. She said she wasn't going anywhere, then walked out the door without it. The temperature that evening was 9 degrees Fahrenheit. Wind brought the effective temperature down to approximately -6 degrees Fahrenheit. The relatives assumed she had gone to sit in one of the 2 cars parked outside, which would have been the reasonable thing to do. No one went out immediately to check. When one relative did go out several minutes later, both cars were empty, and the exterior light showed her footprints in the packed snow leading away from the vehicles and down the cabin road toward the highway. The relatives went back inside for their coats and keys before driving out to look, which added more time before any active search began. By then, she had already reached the highway. Marlene had walked the full length of the cabin road and turned onto the highway shoulder. Investigators later reconstructed her path from physical evidence. Her footprints tracked along the shoulder for approximately 1/3 of a mile before veering from the packed surface into the looser drifted snow at the road's edge. The snow on the embankment showed a clear disturbance where she had descended the slope, disrupted crust, compressed drift, and a drag pattern consistent with someone lowering themselves to sit. She came to rest at the base of a guardrail post on the embankment below road level and out of sight from passing vehicles. She had no coat, no gloves, no hat, and was wearing the indoor shoes she had on during the argument. At 9 degrees Fahrenheit with wind chill, exposed skin begins losing heat rapidly within minutes. She was found the following morning by a driver who had pulled over on the shoulder to check a loose item in the bed of his truck. He noticed her slumped against the guardrail post on the embankment below road level. She was unresponsive. She was approximately 0.4 miles from the cabin turnoff. The relatives confirmed the timeline, the warnings given, and the time she left. Their accounts matched the physical evidence, including her footprint trail and the disturbed snow on the embankment. The coat she refused was later found draped over a chair inside the cabin. Marlene was pronounced dead at the scene. The cause of death was determined to be environmental exposure. The manner was ruled accidental. No other parties were found to have contributed to the circumstances of her death. The case was closed without further action against any individual. A sleeping arrangement dispute sent a retired librarian walking into a Wisconsin winter with no coat and no phone. A few states away, a woman was about to discover that a pair of cleaning products and a sealed bathroom door could lead to a life-altering situation. It was a weekday afternoon in the fall of 2018 in a mid-sized city in Ohio. The neighborhood was a typical urban residential area, made up of older 3- to 4-story apartment buildings with shared hallways and rows of mailboxes near the entrances. One standard brick building sat along the block with a small parking lot in the back and a row of buzzers at the front door. Tamsin Brule was 38 years old and worked as a freelance data entry contractor. She worked from home most days and rarely left the apartment before noon. Her income was modest and inconsistent, and she had been in the same unit for just over 2 years. She was known among former co-workers as someone who kept detailed personal logs of perceived slights and was quick to escalate minor disagreements into formal disputes. She had contacted a tenant advocacy line twice in the prior year over issues that were ultimately found to be within her landlord's rights. She had sent formal written complaints about neighbors on at least 3 separate occasions. She was not someone who let things go easily. Her relationship with her landlord had been strained for several months over a single maintenance request she felt had been deliberately ignored. The request involved a slow drain in the bathroom that she had reported in writing more than once. The landlord had acknowledged it but had not sent anyone to fix it. Tamsin had begun documenting every exchange in writing and had told a friend she intended to build a case against him. 3 weeks before her death, she had come across a warning in an online community forum about the dangers of mixing certain household cleaning products. She had commented under the post that the warning was overstated and that people were being dramatic about basic cleaning supplies. On the morning of the incident, her landlord sent a message notifying her of an unscheduled walkthrough scheduled for later that afternoon. Tamsin had told the same friend that if the landlord ever scheduled a walkthrough, she would take it as retaliation for her complaints. Her ex-husband was also coming by that same afternoon to collect a remaining box of his belongings. She had mentioned to a friend the previous week that she wanted the apartment to look a certain way before he arrived. She cleaned the main rooms first and moved to the bathroom last. The bathroom was a small enclosed space of roughly 35 square feet with a single window and an exhaust fan above the tub. Under the sink, she had several cleaning products, including a bleach-based spray and a separate ammonia-based floor cleaner. She applied both to the floor and tub surfaces within a short period and began scrubbing. The bathroom door was closed, the window was shut, the exhaust fan was not turned on. The combination of the 2 cleaners in the enclosed space began producing chloramine gas almost immediately. Chloramine is colorless and has a sharp chemical odor that can be mistaken for a strong cleaning smell. In a small enclosed bathroom with no ventilation, the concentration can rise quickly. Prolonged exposure in that environment can cause severe respiratory irritation, shortness of breath, and confusion. Based on the physical evidence and the confined layout of the room, investigators concluded she was exposed to the gas for a sustained period without ventilation. The bathroom door and window remained closed. Her ex-husband arrived that afternoon as planned. He knocked several times and received no answer. The front door was unlocked. He entered and noticed a strong chemical smell immediately upon stepping inside. The bathroom door was closed. He opened it and found her on the floor near the tub. Both cleaning product bottles were found open on the bathroom floor. The window was confirmed shut, and the exhaust fan was confirmed off at the time her ex-husband found her. The front door had been unlocked, consistent with his account of entering without a key. The landlord's walkthrough had not yet taken place. A determination was made that acute respiratory failure due to chemical inhalation was the cause of death. Investigators concluded that the chloramine gas produced by mixing the 2 cleaners in the unventilated space led to the fatal exposure. The manner was ruled accidental. The ex-husband cooperated fully and was eliminated as a person of interest the same day based on the physical evidence and corroborating accounts of his whereabouts earlier that afternoon. No fault was assigned to any other party. The case was closed. A woman's attempt to keep her apartment perfect clashed with unexpected timing, turning a small enclosed space into a dangerous trap. Elsewhere, years earlier in California, a routine parking dispute would spiral into consequences no one on the street expected. It was a weekday morning in the spring of 2016 in a residential neighborhood in Sacramento, California. The narrow two-lane street had a noticeable downhill grade, with posted signs reminding drivers to turn their wheels into the curb when parking. Deborah Koslow was 54 years old and worked part-time as a bookkeeper for a small family-owned business. She kept a consistent daily routine, running errands in the same general area most weekday mornings before going in for her afternoon shift. She had driven the same routes through that neighborhood for years and was familiar with nearly every block. People who knew her described her as someone who treated every minor dispute as a matter of principle rather than convenience, and who did not respond well to being corrected by anyone she considered to be in a position of minor authority. She had contested parking citations on at least 4 separate occasions in the 2 years prior. On one occasion, she had followed a meter maid to their next stop on the same street to continue an argument that had already been resolved against her. She was known among neighbors for sending group emails about parking violations on their block and had once demanded written justification from a parking enforcement officer for a citation she had received years earlier. On the morning of the incident, Deborah parked her 1998 Honda Accord on the downhill side of the street, which had an approximately 8% grade, to drop off a document at a neighbor's house. She left the car in park but did not turn the front wheels into the curb, violating posted parking rules, a habit she had maintained for years. A meter maid was already writing a citation when she returned minutes later. Deborah approached immediately and began contesting the citation on the spot. The meter maid pointed to the posted sign and indicated the wheels were not turned into the curb. Deborah disagreed and stated she had parked on that street many times without issue. The exchange continued for several minutes without resolution. Neither party moved from the spot. As the conversation continued, Deborah reached back into the open driver's side door and leaned across toward the passenger seat where the folder was sitting. While leaning across the seat, her weight shifted onto the door frame and seat edge. Investigators determined the transmission had not been fully engaged in park when she exited the vehicle, leaving the parking mechanism only partially seated. The shift in her weight altered the load on the drivetrain, allowing the partially engaged parking mechanism to slip free. The car began rolling backward down the grade. Deborah was still partially inside the door frame when the vehicle started moving. Her body weight was distributed between the door frame and the seat, which made it difficult to push herself clear quickly. The meter maid's vehicle was parked about 15 feet behind Deborah's car. On the 8% grade, the rollback covered that distance in roughly 3 to 4 seconds. Deborah was still partially inside the door frame and could not pull clear before her rear bumper struck the front of the meter maid's vehicle, pinning her at the hip and lower torso and causing fatal internal injuries. The meter maid was standing approximately 6 feet to the side at the moment the car began moving and witnessed the entire sequence from start to finish. 2 residents on the sidewalk across the street also observed the rollback and collision. All 3 accounts were consistent on every key detail. Deborah was pronounced dead at the scene. The transmission was found disengaged from park, and the folder she had been reaching for was open on the passenger seat. The front wheels were still pointing straight, consistent with witness accounts. The death was ruled accidental, and the case was closed without further action. If you've been watching this far, consider subscribing. More stories like this one are on the way. It was a weekday evening in the summer of 2016 in a mid-sized city in Georgia. The storage facility sat along a quiet commercial strip surrounded by a chain-link fence and limited exterior lighting. Rows of single-story metal units stretched toward the back of the property. After the office closed, the grounds were mostly empty. Corinne Mabette was 43 years old and worked as a shift supervisor at a retail distribution center on the outskirts of the city. She kept irregular hours and rarely followed a predictable schedule outside of work. She had rented a storage unit at the facility for several years and used it regularly to store household overflow, tools, and seasonal equipment. She was known among co-workers for challenging workplace policies she disagreed with by simply not following them, rather than raising the issue through any formal channel. She had disputed fees in person at the facility on multiple occasions by arriving at the front office unannounced with her original rental agreement in hand. The previous year, she had persuaded another unit holder to co-sign a joint grievance letter she had drafted against the facility over a rate increase she considered unjustified. She had ignored 2 written notices about after-hours access sent to her in the weeks prior to the incident and had arrived outside staffed hours on several occasions specifically to avoid direct interaction with management. The issue involved an unpaid balance she believed was a billing error. The facility had locked her out twice in the previous month. That evening, she arrived after the office had closed using an access code that had not yet been deactivated. A gas-powered generator was stored in her 10 by 10 metal unit, which had no built-in ventilation and roughly 800 cubic feet of enclosed space. Corinne unlocked the unit and raised the door. She located the generator near the back wall and pulled it toward the front of the space, positioning it a few feet inside the threshold. Several extension cords were already coiled along the side wall. She connected one of them and started the generator while it was still inside the unit. The engine noise filled the enclosed metal structure immediately. Once it was running, she lowered the roll-up door to within approximately 4 inches of the ground. The sound of the engine continued at a steady pace from inside the unit. From outside, only a faint vibration and low mechanical hum could be heard through the metal door. No additional adjustments were made to increase airflow. The unit block remained quiet. No other doors in that row were open at the time. Approximately 20 minutes later, another unit holder entered the facility and drove toward his unit in the same row. As he stepped out of his vehicle, he heard the sound of an engine running from one of the closed units. He noticed a thin strip of light visible beneath Corinne's roll-up door. He approached and knocked several times. There was no response. He lifted the roll-up door partway and saw Corinne lying on the floor near the back wall of the unit. The generator was still operating beside her. He immediately lowered the door and stepped away from the structure before contacting emergency services. The generator was confirmed still running when first responders arrived. The roll-up door gap was measured at approximately 4 inches. Carbon monoxide poisoning was confirmed as the cause of death. The manner was ruled accidental. The facility's access log showed she had entered after staffed hours using a code that had not yet been deactivated. A review of internal procedures identified a delay in code deactivation, though this had no bearing on the final ruling. The case was closed without further action against any individual. A late-night visit to a storage unit combined with a familiar tool created a situation far beyond what anyone could predict. Meanwhile, in North Carolina, a home repair would become a test of understanding the risks hidden in plain sight. It was a weekday afternoon in the late summer of 2018 in a mid-sized suburban neighborhood in North Carolina. The area was a typical post-2000 residential development with single-family homes sitting on modest lots, shared driveways, and streets wide enough for 2 cars to pass without slowing. The houses on that block were owner-occupied for the most part, and most of the neighbors had lived there long enough to know each other by name, if not by much else. Paulette Hinshaw was 49 years old and worked part-time as a receptionist at a chiropractic office. She spent most of her evenings at home and handled most household maintenance decisions herself rather than deferring to outside help. She had hired and formally disputed payment with 3 separate contractors in the prior 2 years over work she deemed unsatisfactory after the fact. She was known in the neighborhood for leaving detailed negative reviews of local tradespeople online within days of hiring them, sometimes before the work was even fully complete. Among former co-workers, she had a reputation for consulting online tutorials as a substitute for professional advice and then attributing poor results to the tutorial rather than her own execution. A contractor had completed a partial kitchen renovation at Paulette's home several weeks prior. In the weeks following, she noticed the kitchen light fixture flickering intermittently. She contacted the contractor several times over a 2-week period and received no response after the 3rd attempt. Rather than hiring a new electrician, she looked up several online tutorials about replacing hardwired light fixtures. She had replaced a bathroom light fixture 2 years earlier without issue and proceeded on that basis. On the afternoon of the incident, she gathered the tools she needed and set up a step stool beneath the kitchen fixture. Before climbing up, she turned the wall switch off. She did not go to the breaker panel to cut power to the kitchen circuit. The kitchen floor had a linoleum surface that had been lightly damp from mopping earlier that afternoon. She was wearing socked feet. The kitchen fixture was a hardwired unit mounted to a ceiling junction box. Although the wall switch was off, investigators determined live voltage was still present inside the box. Cutting power at the breaker panel is the only reliable way to fully de-energize a circuit before handling exposed wiring. Paulette climbed the step stool and removed the fixture cover. She disconnected the old fixture from the wiring inside the junction box and began handling the exposed wire ends. While doing so, she made simultaneous contact with both the live and neutral wires with her bare right hand. She was standing on a damp linoleum floor in socked feet at the time of contact. The combination of simultaneous wire contact and the conductive path through her body to the damp floor was sufficient to cause cardiac arrest. She fell backward off the step stool onto the kitchen floor. The step stool landed on its side beside her. Her neighbor had arranged to come by that evening to retrieve a set of garden tools she had borrowed from Paulette 2 weeks earlier. She knocked several times and received no answer. She noticed the lights were on inside, and Paulette's car was in the driveway. The front door was unlocked. She entered and found Paulette on the kitchen floor. The fixture was partially disconnected and hanging from the junction box above. The wall switch was confirmed in the off position at the time of examination. The breaker for the kitchen circuit was confirmed still on. The damp condition of the floor surface was noted and consistent with Paulette having mopped earlier that afternoon. The neighbor's account of the prior arrangement to collect the garden tools and her discovery of Paulette was consistent with the physical evidence at the scene. The cause of death was confirmed as electrocution and ruled accidental. The contractor was interviewed and confirmed he had not been in contact with Paulette in the weeks prior to her death and had no involvement in the circumstances. No fault was assigned to any other party. The case was closed without further action against any individual. Thanks for watching. If you liked these stories, click here.